are President Trump's actions abroad playing on the world stage and affecting his domestic agenda? Joining me in Washington are ABC News political director Rick Klein and Jennifer Jacobs, White House reporter for Bloomberg Politics. And here in South Korea, Jonathan Chang, the Wall Street Journal's Seoul bureau chief. Welcome to all of you. And I want to start with you, Jonathan, because you're right here next to me. You called North Korea's missile launch today a sign of their confidence in the face of President Trump's warning. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it definitely shows that Kim Jong-un is not going to be cowed when President Trump, arguably, probably the world's most powerful man, has essentially been saying that if you do anything that crosses the line, we're going to act. That hasn't stopped him from wheeling out what may be as many as 3 new ICBMs, and it hasn't stopped him also from trying to launch a new missile.
So they're not believing Trump's
I don't know
talk.
that it's not believing, but North Korea is a small country, and it has been wedged here between China, between Russia, between the U.S., Japan, all these powers. And the way it's been able to survive for so long, in part, has been by charting its own course and doing things against the grain. We don't know what they're going to do.
Okay, Jennifer, I want to go back to you and the word from Washington. There was a poll out Friday from CBS News that 56% of Americans are uneasy about Trump's ability to deal with this. Not a good sign, Jennifer.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There is substantial unease. And it's almost like Americans are on a little bit of overload with the bombs on Syria last week and the big bomb in Afghanistan this week. So they're just not sure what Trump is thinking on North Korea. They're on overload. But I can give you a little bit of a window. I know that his national security team put together various scenarios based on, how they thought that North Korea would behave this weekend and what their reactions to that would be. And I'm told that when this medium-range missile fizzled right after launch, that Trump decided pretty quickly to just downplay it. I can also tell you a few other quick things that I'm told that Trump is not into regime change, regime removal for North Korea. He's not thinking about removing Kim Jong-un from power. He's not thinking about trying to unify the two Koreas. That's not on his mind. I'm also told, the word kinetic comes up a lot, that he is definitely willing to carry out kinetic military action, a sudden attack. But the key thing here, and you heard this a lot in your interview with General McMaster, Martha, is China, China, China. I was told by one advisor that the president has said North Korea is a Chinese problem located in North Korea.
Okay, Rick Klein. But all this talk of national security, and it seems like all we've talked about for a couple of weeks here, let's go back to the domestic agenda of President Trump. And he's not really making much progress there. Health reform, tax reform, the travel ban stuck in the courts. So what's up?
Well, if there is a Trump doctrine, the president is stumbling into that doctrine. And the context that you mentioned is critical here. We're coming up on the end of that critical first 100-day period, and he is striking out. Nothing going on health care, tax reform, infrastructure. None of these things are moving. But the hope among Capitol Hill Republicans actually is that these things are connected. And what I've heard from several members of Congress on Capitol Hill is that this Trump as commander-in-chief, these actions on the world stage, they are bucking up the mood among Republicans, at least for now. It's very tentative. And I'll tell you, they have given up on trying to figure out what President Trump really believes because of the recent shifts in policy and just how fast-moving all of these actions on the world stage are. But the hope is that these things are connected and that this viewing of President Trump as commander-in-chief tackling world problems, that could have a spillover effect on the legislative agenda, and they could start to put some more points on the board domestically.
And Jennifer, I want to ask you about all these flip-flops we've heard. Is that really say much about his strategy, or is it just the reality of governing?
Probably just the reality of governing. I mean, one striking thing here is that he's listening to his career staff. And he's been almost establishment in his actions and his thinking with this. But, his staff have been arguing that these were not shifts so much as, concessions in his favor. For example, I was told that in his meetings with the NATO Secretary General that he was very, very firm, very pushy about wanting, more money for defense, more participation in fighting terrorism, and that he's getting his way on those things. On China, on the currency manipulation, there was this new report out from the Treasury Department this week that very specifically said that none of our trading partners could meet the criteria right now to be labeled a currency manipulator. So again, he's listening to his career staff right now, which is unusual.
And Rick, is he listening to Republicans on the Hill? Is he listening to his base?
It's quite the time for on-the-job training. Now, the base and Republicans on the Hill, those are two very separate things. If you look at the way that he has been moving, despite all of the talk about broken campaign promises, he's actually moving closer to the mainstream of the Republican Party, and maybe even the broader bipartisan mainstream about America's role in the world. That heartens a whole bunch of Capitol Hill Republicans, who the people that have heartburn over this are more of his core base. And that includes some members of the Freedom Caucus, some libertarians who say, what is it with all this foreign adventurism? Same goes really for the staff shakeup that we hear about so much, and the attention right now on Steve Bannon getting sidelined. There's an interesting twist to the potential for Steve Bannon to be set off to the side. The fact is that there's a lot of members of Congress that would privately cheer that on the Republican side. Steve Bannon is not liked widely by members of Republican leadership. In fact, many of them are getting very close contacts now and good relationships with Jared Kushner. So it could be that these internal staff shakeups actually help President Trump. Even though they are not good headlines, they help with his relationships on Capitol Hill.
And Jonathan, I want to talk to you again about here on the Korean Peninsula. We started the program that way. We end the program this way. What do you really expect here next? I mean, when I walk around the city, people aren't frightened. People are pretty calm. People are pretty used to it. But you heard us talk today. It is at a very, very serious stage.
You're right that South Koreans are used to this. They've lived in the shadow of the North Korean threat for 50, 60, 70 years. It's not unusual for them to hear these bellicose remarks from the North. What they aren't used to is hearing it also from the White House. And if you're South Korean here, you're looking at a neighbor that is perhaps on the verge of something big happening here, and it may start there, and it may start from Washington, and you feel a little bit caught in the crossfire.
So they're more nervous when they hear this aggressive talk?
I think so. Again, usually the White House, Washington has been a reassuring force. I think that's why Mike Pence is here in a certain sense. I think he's here to reassure the allies. But you have Trump tweeting and sometimes going quite wild in his rhetoric from one side to the other, and it's unclear what exactly he intends to do.
And does it seem to you quickly that he has a red line?
Well, I don't know what that red line is, and I don't know that North Korea has gotten the message either. And I think South Korea here, too, is concerned that nobody knows right where this is.
Okay, we'll have to watch. We'll have to check back in with you again. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to all our panel.